Good afternoon. Welcome back to KXAN Live. I am your host, Esmeralda Zamora, and today on this Tuesday afternoon, we have our Nick's First Warning weather segment with Chief Meteorologist Nick Bannin. Nick, thanks for joining us. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm okay. I'll be honest, I've got a little bit of a cold, so I'm a little stuffy here today. I think that's what happens when you get two kids that bring home germs all the time. And I'm like, wash your hands, wash your hands, wash your hands. And they're washing their hands all the time, but one's 2 and still learning. And so no doubt it was going to happen eventually. I'm just lucky that this is my first cold of the year so far, and we're in April, so I guess I've done pretty well, but just a little under the weather today.
Well, this morning I woke up and we had a bit of gloomy skies and a little bit of grayness in the sky, but it looks to be cleared up right now.
Yeah, blue skies coming out. We had that cold front come through last night that cooled us off nicely, and we had highs of 93 yesterday, and some places are going to struggle to get into the 80s here today, so kind of beneficial there.
Well, let's jump right into it. We're talking about La Niña being over.
Yes,
right?
Yes, and we're tying that into rain and the spring, and we'll talk about how we tie it in here in a second. Let's just look at the rainfall that we typically get in the spring season. You can see what the averages are like per month in Austin. You can see in March we typically get 2.88 inches of rain. April we actually get drier on average in Austin at Camp Mabry. And then we get much wetter as we head through the month of May. And May is not just the wettest spring month. It is easily our wettest month of the entire year. There's not even a month that averages more than 4 inches, with the exception of May, that averages over 5. So it's a significantly wet month on average. And the spring season is our wettest season on average as well. So this goes to sort of point out how important it is that we get rain in spring, because it is such a wet season on average. It is a season that we depend on to get the necessary rain that can tie us over and hold us over during the hotter and drier months of summer. And what it can typically mean, sometimes anyway, is that if you've got a drier spring, the soil, if it's still dry, let's say we don't also have a wet winter, if you've, say, got a dry winter and then a dry spring, then that could lead to more heat in the summer because the soil is drier too. Sometimes it can mean less humidity in the summer, but it can also give way to hotter weather in the summer. So we need the rain not just to keep our summer temperatures down, but also for the lakes, the aquifers, and then the soil. Mm-hmm. So where are we so far? Today is the rough midpoint of spring. Happy rough midpoint of spring, Esme.
It doesn't really feel like it. I feel like spring just started a couple of days ago.
Well, yes, it sort of feels like that. Technically, meteorological spring started March 1st, and today's the 15th of April, so midway through April, it means that we're at the rough midway point here. What we should have had for rain by now, since March 1st in Austin, was over 4 inches of rain. And what we've had is under 2. So already a 2-inch plus rainfall deficit for spring so far. So we're not off to a great start. As we've been talking about a lot lately, our drought has been worsening. This is the current drought now. We will get another update on the drought here on Thursday that will probably show more worsening because we haven't had barely any rain, if any, over the last week in most places. And you can see most of the area is a level 3 out of 4 drought. And then you get into western Travis, western Hayes, much of Blanco, Gillespie, southern Llano, southern Burnett counties in extreme level 4 out of 4 drought. So for some people, they're dealing with a drought that's, at least as far as these stages go, as bad as it can get. And look at where we were 4 months ago. We were in a much better shape then, but at that point, the drought was just starting to really get worse. And now it's continued to get worse. So it wasn't like we were great then 4 months ago, but we're in far worse shape now. So that brings us to, so that's where we are at so far this spring. And now let's talk about going forward. Let's jump ahead here to the phase of ENSO, or El Niño-Southern Oscillation. Okay, so El Niño-Southern Oscillation is broken up into several parts. El Niño is the warm phase, La Niña is the cool phase, and neutral is the phase that is neither warm or cool. It's sort of closer to average. These are determined by the sea surface temperature anomalies in a portion of the eastern Pacific Ocean. So anyway, this past winter, we were in a weak and short duration La Nina, and we just got word last week that La Nina has now ended. So that means this spring, March, April, May, MAM there at the bottom, is neutral. So we've gone from a La Nina winter to a neutral spring, and you can see we're expected to stay neutral here for quite some time. And if I pull out my trusty arrow here to do a little illustration and highlighting, what you'll be able to notice is that we should be staying in this neutral phase where neutral is at least more than 50% likely through at least ASO, August, September, October. So through summer into at least a portion of fall. And even the neutral phase is favored going through fall and possibly into next winter. What would be second favored to neutral is another La Nina winter again, which is not going to be great news for us if it's a drier than normal one, which is what typical La Ninas are here in Central Texas. But that may be a discussion for another day. We'll usually have a better confidence on what to expect for next winter once we get past the spring. But this spring, ENSO Neutral. So you may wonder, what does ENSO Neutral mean for rain in the spring here in Central Texas, given that we so desperately need it? Well, I did some digging yesterday. Took me about an hour and a half of research. And I looked at which spring seasons, MAM, March, April, May, were neutral coming directly after a La Nina winter. And there's actually not a lot of them. I went back all the way to 1965. I could have gone further, but I wanted to get at least somewhat of a sample size to figure out if there was any connection to having a ENSO neutral spring coming directly after a La Nina winter. So I came up with 7 different years that has happened. And then I tallied the rainfall in each of those springs. So you can see 2023, 10.12 inches of rain that spring. And you can see here at the bottom right, the average spring rainfall is 10.34. So 2023, which was the most recent edition of a ENSO neutral spring coming after a La Nina winter, had actually pretty close to average rainfall, but it was still technically drier than normal. 2009, another example of an ENSO neutral spring directly after a La Nina winter. That was much drier than normal, 7.5 inches of rain compared to the almost 10.5 inches of rain that we should have had. 2006, though, was wet. Several inches more rain than usual. But 2001, dry. 1996, incredibly dry. And then 1984, even drier than that with just 3.82 inches of rain. And then another wet spring in 1965. So, we don't want to make more of this than is here. There's only a short number of years where these sort of statistics line up of spring being ENSO neutral coming directly after a La Nina winter. But out of those 7 years, the last 7 times that this type of pattern has set up, 5 of the 7 have been drier than normal, which to me stands out as being more significant than, say, just 1 or say 3 out of 7 or 4 out of 7, that sort of thing. So given the fact that we're already dry this spring and we're halfway through, and 5 out of the 7 springs with this sort of pattern, this ENSO neutral pattern coming after a La Nina winter, have also been drier than normal, it basically doesn't bode that well for spring rainfall for us. So that's the connection that I put together in our blog that's on kxan.com. There are certainly exceptions. 2 years where we had way above average rainfall in 2006 and 1965 when that ENSO neutral spring came after a La Nina winter. So it is not an impossibility that we can play time catch up over the next few weeks as we round out April and head into May and get more rain. But the odds are not in our favor, especially given what we just talked about, the lack of rainfall so far this spring. It is going to be very tough to make up not just the second half of spring, make it wetter than normal, but also make up the difference of the first half of spring missing out on more than 2 inches of rain. Yeah. But it can be done. It's been done in the past, but the odds are not necessarily in our favor here. And that's what my blog's about.
And we will talk a little more on the rain we can expect later this week, right after this break. And we're back. We were just talking about the rain for this spring and the need for rain. And to talk a little bit more about the rain we may see later this week is Chief Meteorologist Nick Bannin. And Nick, what can we expect to see in the forecast?
All right, so we've gotten the negative stuff out of the way, the dry weather theme, the odds not being in our favor. But a decently wet pattern seems to be setting up for us beginning the end of this week into the weekend. But we think not just for this weekend, but for next week, possibly the week after that, and maybe even into May as well, as May is not too far around the corner.
So we're going to have a pretty wet Easter is what you're saying.
So I'd be hesitant to say that because I think that the wettest weather over the weekend is going to come Saturday evening and night and early Sunday morning. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not going to say all the rain's done by the time you wake up Sunday. It is a little too early to get super specific about start time and end time of the rain. But from what we're seeing, the odds of the wettest period seem to be focused around the Saturday night, early Sunday morning time frame. The odds of rain later in the day on Sunday look like they go down from the morning. So a drying trend later on Sunday, Monday looking mostly dry, and then Tuesday getting into another round of rain and storms too. So this is how it's looking over the next week. Let me just take you through the rough timing then. We'll speed through the majority of the work week. Slight rain and storm chances on Friday. But then as we get into Saturday evening, Saturday night, a better chance of some rain and thunderstorms. I think the wettest weather is going to be in the hill country. That's where we'll get some of the highest rainfall coverage, highest rainfall totals, because some of these showers and storms may focus themselves over the hill country and then lose some of their steam as they get closer to the metro. Still some leftover rain into part of Sunday morning with a general drying trend as we head later into the day on Sunday. And then it's possible again that we get a little more rain starting to build back in as we head into the day on, say, Monday night into Tuesday for yet another round of some rain and storms then. How much would this add up to? I want to focus on the Friday night through Sunday period primarily. We'll start adding in Monday and especially Tuesday. It's Monday, we're not expecting much, but we'll start adding in Tuesday's rain when we get a little closer. I think separating it by rounds makes it a little easier to digest and also helps you lower the rainfall expectations for the weekend because in our eastern counties, you may struggle to even get a quarter of an inch when you add up Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And remember, most of the rainfall totals will come Saturday night into early Sunday morning. But the highest rainfall totals and the highest coverage, as I mentioned, going to be in the hill country where we're looking at 1 to 2 inches of rain from Mason to Llano, Lampasas, San Saba, part of Burnett, northern and northwestern Gillespie County. Most of the metro, in fact, all the metro in our 1/4 inch to 1 inch section. That does not mean you get an inch in Austin. It means a 1/4 inch to an inch. We can't be that specific. Sure, we would love it if you're on the higher end of the range, but it's a little too tough to tell about that at this point. And then a 1/4 inch or less in our eastern counties. And of course, the farther east you are in the metro, the closer you are to that 1/4 inch or less. You could roughly assume that you'll probably end up with the lower end of that range in the eastern metro as you get closer to those lower totals. But the good news, Esme, is that this is not our only shot of rain. You know how we had that chance of rain like a week and a half ago or so that in many cases disappointed except parts of the hill country? And then that was it for a week. And then it was like if we didn't get that rain, we got nothing. Yeah. And then it was setting us up for a week of dry weather. Well, this is not that. if you don't get as much rain as you want over the weekend, there's more opportunity for rain. The almost the last week there of April, the 23rd through the 29th, leaning very heavily towards still being wetter than normal. So the opportunities are there over the next week to finishing up April that will be wetter than normal. And I do want to mention that I know we sometimes can preview what we're going to talk about next week. Sometimes it's a little hard because sometimes I don't know on a Tuesday what we're going to be talking about next Tuesday. But next Tuesday, we'll get the May forecast from the Climate Prediction Center, and we'll be able to share that. And it's perhaps the most important one of the year because May is such an important month for us for rain because it sets us up so well or so poorly for summer that we want to make sure that we can get all the rain we can handle in May. Now, it does mean that flash flooding concerns, severe weather concerns usually go up in May and peak in May. So we want to be ready for all of those things too, but we so desperately need the rain.
And Nick, when does meteorological spring end exactly?
Yeah, so meteorological spring, the seasons are full months. So it's March, April, May. So at the end of May, meteorological spring is over and June 1st begins meteorological summer. Now, our wettest period here in Central Texas, while the season of spring is our wettest season, May through the first couple weeks of June is our wettest sort of 6-week period, if you can sum it up like that. So into the first half of June could still be pretty active and stormy and rainy for us. And then the rain sort of just shuts off around the middle of June as we get set for that July hot and dry pattern that we love so much.
We love so much, and we're anticipating as it nears closer to that time of year. But we do have that article that you wrote up today, or I believe yesterday, and it is on our homepage, kxan.com, and all of the details as far as rain goes is in here. Right?
Yeah, and you can see a rough projection of what phase of ENSO we're expected to be in during what part of the month. We'll recap the drought where we're at so far, the rainfall for halfway through spring, which, again, if you're just joining us, today is the halfway mark of meteorological spring. And then you can see, back when you were in math class in high school, elementary, middle school, the teacher says, show your work, right? Because they want to make sure that you're not cheating, that you've got the right answer, and that you've got the right answer without just guessing. Yeah. So I tried to show my work here, breaking down the last 10 years of ENSO Neutral. And then I dug out from those years, okay, which ones were ENSO Neutral coming after La Niña winter. But that only got me 3 years. So then I had to keep going further back to find more years that qualified because I didn't want to make any assumptions based on just 3 years. And then I went back all the way to 1965, and then I tried to show my work that way. So that you could follow along with me at home and figure out where I got this from. Unfortunately, it's not great news. It doesn't mean that we're necessarily going to be in for a wetter spring, but of those 7 springs that sort of fit the criteria, 2 of them were wetter than normal. So it's not hopeless. It just means that the odds are not necessarily in our favor for us to make up not only the difference of what we've been missing so far this spring, but to make the rest of spring wetter than normal.
Yeah, and we, like you mentioned, we are expecting a few showers towards the end of the week. So keep that umbrella in your car or by your front door. Just be prepared for that. Yeah,
and I wouldn't cancel Easter plans just yet based on our chances for rain and storms. We're going to have a much better idea on the timing of rain and storms for the weekend as we get a little closer to the weekend. But just keep it in the back of your mind, especially those Easter egg hunts that they could be done in wet grass potentially or under an umbrella.
Or inside.
Or inside, The Easter Bunny is flexible.
So if anyone is interested in staying up to date on that forecast, where can they follow? Where can they see you? Yeah, so meteorologist Freddie Vella's got the 4 o'clock for me today. I'll be joining you at 5 and 6 on KXAN, 9 o'clock on CW Austin, and then again on KXAN News at 10. We'll be tracking the rain chances all week long. We all know how desperately we need this rain, and but don't put all of your eggs in one basket for the weekend because we've got more opportunities for rain after this weekend too. Well, thanks so much for joining us, Nick. We're excited to see what we talk about next week. Yes, we'll see you then. Thank you.